Welcome to another episode of Pels and the Blender. It's your boy Davis coming to y'all on this Monday morning, still in the prime runs of the playoffs and whatnot. But wanted to was sitting there thinking, and I wasn't gonna do an episode initially. I was kind of working through some of like the process of building this episode out, but it kind of was, you know, going like kind of fast or whatever. And I got excited about it, putting together the sheet and whatnot. So what I'm probably gonna do is kind of do the episode right now. And then I think I'm gonna like double back and have some guests come on and like have the discussion about some of the things that I discussed on this particular episode with the Pelicans and their coaching search. So I wanted to initially do this particular episode so I can kind of like work through some of the thoughts on my own and then, kind of get like the responses and stuff like that. So we'll be probably building on this throughout as the coaching search continues. But that's just my initial thought process and like why I decided to put this episode out. But my line of thinking is like while I'm watching the games and as you watching the games, you notice a bunch of different things happening. Like you see how the coaching really matters at this level and moving forward, obviously. Again, like I spoke about Jamal Mosley, and like Jamal Mosley's pretty much going to get fired, or it appears Jamal Mosley's going to get fired, and then he comes out and has a really good his team at least has a really good game against the number one seed Detroit. They win the game on the road, and you'll continue to see how that series pans out. But that's kind of how like coaching works and how things can change. Again, some of the things I saw from Jamal Mosley, I thought he was fine, but I didn't particularly like. I don't know if I necessarily like Jamal as the guy here. Like if he were to be the guy here, I don't necessarily know if I like it. And then with the names that have been mentioned throughout, whether they're accurate or not, there's been a bunch of names thrown out for this job, right? Or to be for the Pelicans front office to have interest in this job. You had Darvin Ham's name thrown out, Kevin Ollie's name thrown out. You had Jared Dudley's name been thrown out recently. Obviously Borrego is a candidate. Of course, like he's the current interim, and Joe Dumars said like verbatim he would have an opportunity to get this job. So it just made me think, and like we throw out a lot of names, right? A lot of the fan base and the people in the media space kind of throw out names that they think would be interested in the Pelicans taking a look at. So I kind of created my own Pels in the Blender coaching search, right? And what I did is the top 5 candidates that I would like to see hired. I would like to see at least interview for this particular job, and not only interviewed, I guess, but like if they were to receive this job, the kind of coaching staff that they would need, because it's one thing to hire the coach, right? But you also have to build the coaching staff out. Now, it's a bunch of guys that's on coaching staffs, but I only did like the top 5 positions. Essentially, I looked at who's your number 2. I wanted a offensive coordinator to a degree, a defensive coordinator, and at least one guy that like would be one of the most important like developmental kind of guys. Like who do I want help developing my players? And it's a bunch of different names, but that's kind of what I put into my list. And again, you need more coaches outside of that, but that's just the initial like what I put through, or like the beginning process of building this out and how I started. Now, I'm gonna be honest. I do not think do I think some of these coaches may get an opportunity to get an interview here? Possible. Do I think they would take the job here? As we're talking about like the coaching search in general, realistically, it don't seem like there's going to be that many jobs available, right? Like that's gonna be honestly the least amount of jobs available, I think can work in the Pelicans' favor to a degree, because obviously, if there's not many jobs to take, you should realistically have like your pick. You know what I mean? You should. Whoa, what's good, bro? Appreciate it, man. I know we in the off season, so I'm trying to make sure I keep the content out, keep us with something to kind of think about, something to keep the ideas fresh, keep the mind fresh, right? And I'm in a place right now where my schoolwork kind of easing up, so I got a little bit more time to kind of like focus on putting out some good stuff, I think. But what was I saying? So like with the way the league looks right now, you're not even really sure how many teams are going to be looking for coaches. Like as of right now, the only two that are actually available is the Milwaukee job and the New Orleans Pelicans job. But realistically, you would think like maybe Darvin Ham is probably a favorite in Milwaukee. The last time they hired a coach before Doc Rivers, they hired Adrian Griffin, who was already in their building. Darvin Ham was in their building before he went to LA. When LA left, he went back to Milwaukee. So I don't know what kind of search Milwaukee's going to do for their job, but like it would be, I would imagine Darvin Ham is going to be a candidate for that particular job, right? It might have the inside track on that particular position. So if that would be the case, then all you're really looking at right now is the Pelicans, right? If you go through other positions, you hear Portland may have an opening because Tiago Split is the interim there, but the reports coming out that, and who knows how true that is, but it's being reported that Portland is talking about looking for an extremely cheap head coach. And if that's the case, I don't know if any of the candidates that I'm about to mention are going to want to leave their situation to go to Portland to be one of the, least compensated coaches in the NBA. So with that being said, that's just kind of like setting the preference for who's going to be out there and like what it is we're looking at. So with that being the case, let me go ahead and pull this up. And if y'all can see this, that's basically my that is my list / chart that we put together today, and we still building on it. So I have some patience with that. But essentially, this is my New Orleans Pelicans super coaching staff, right? Out of the coaching search. So how I broke this down was, excuse me, sorry about that. I have five choices, right? Like 5 coaching candidates that should have a realistic opportunity of getting this job based on experience, and a couple different paths that you want to go. So what I did was I was looking at the possibility of first-year head coaches, right? A veteran head coach, and obviously James Borrego, which I don't want to say you have to have, but like James Borrego, who isn't like a first-year head coach, but a coach who deserves another opportunity. Like I firmly believe in coaches being like, if you had a stop somewhere, if you were a head coach, like you had one job, and whether you did well or not, if it didn't go, the best in your first go around, I don't think you should never get a second opportunity. I think you take some time off, you learn from your experience. And if you find the right situation, it's possible you could do better on your second stop. So like you've seen plenty of coaches throughout their history get multiple opportunities to become a coach or to become a head coach if they stick with it. Like Willie Green, for everything that we felt about Willie Green had some successes, and maybe he can learn from some of his mistakes here moving forward to his next opportunity. But people expect Taylor Jenkins to get another opportunity at some point. James Borrego, this would be his second opportunity if he were to get this job. So that's kind of like how I looked at it, right? So first, let's go with my first choice. My first choice that I will hire if I'm really going to like gonna hire a coach who I think should get this job, I think after thinking about it, I think I'm sold on Sam Cassell. Initially, it was Tom Thibodeau, but as I go back and look at it and whatnot, I think I'm going with Sam Cassell. The reason I'm doing that is one, Sam has the playing career, right? He had a successful playing career. He's been coaching for extremely long time now. Still hasn't had an opportunity yet. Was with some winning organizations, right? Spent some time under Doc, spent some time under he's been in the Celtics organization for a while. So I'm of the mindset that like a first time head coach really getting the opportunity to like in an organization like the Pelicans, who has Joe Dumars, which I think Joe Dumars' mindset and vision could line up with what Sam Cassell will want. Not saying that they're like gonna have to do a rebuild or want to do a rebuild, but I think a coach like Sam Cassell kind of fits if you want to try to pursue winning now, and if you want to go the rebuild route. Similar to when, like, think about more so when what's his name, man? In Miami, the coach when Spo took over for Pat Riley, right? When Spo took over for Pat Riley, Eric Spoelstra had been in the Miami Heat organization for a while before he took over that job, right? And with that being the case, whoa, what's good, bro? With Spo taking over, he had Pat Riley upstairs who was able to give him guidance, right? Able to give him guidance. Miami was not in a rebuilding situation. Now, granted, they just brought in the big three, and it was up to Spoelstra to try and figure that out. I don't think that would be the case here. Obviously, you're not bringing in players of that caliber, but at the same time, I think I think Sam Cassell has been around long enough to like be able to deal with a bunch of different stars, based on his experience, relate young stars, older stars, depending on whatever kind of player you bring in. So I think, to be honest, moving forward, if it's me, I'm hoping Sam Cassell is the guy that they bring in for the interview. And not only the interview, I'm hoping that that's the guy that they decide to hire moving forward. I think he would fit either timeline, whether you wanted to compete now or if at some point you needed to go through a rebuild. I think he has the kind of flexibility, coaching acumen, resume. I think he would still have the drive to prove himself, because you're talking about, if you're trying to win now or something like that, you're probably talking about maybe like 1 or 2 seasons before you truly lean into Jeremiah Fears and Derek Queen and like going like a young route. And I think that still would fit like where he is. He's not like, incredibly old either. He's a relatively young man. So I think that's a guy that you can have around for an extended period of time, because most of the coaches we've had recently, like the Pelicans, don't have just like a history of long tenured coaches, right? Most of them you see at most it'll be like 5 seasons or something like that. Excuse me. And then you're like replacing coaches. So to get a guy that will possibly be able to be here, have some credibility from a playing standpoint, have some credibility, like Willie Green had, he was with Golden State and he was also with Phoenix, but Willie Green didn't just have like this long coaching resume when he came in to be the head coach, right? Sam Cassell, on the other hand, has, all over a decade of just coaching experience alone. So he's a guy who's seen a lot, been through the playoffs, a championship assistant, been around a bunch of different types of basketball. So like, I think moving forward, honestly, Sam Cassell would be the perfect hire, right? Even with that being said, just because I think Sam Cassell would be the perfect hire doesn't mean you could just throw anybody on the staff with Sam Cassell and that makes a difference. So that is why we built the rest of this out. So what I want for my coaches, no matter what coach it is that we hire, I want whoever your number 2 is to be a former head coach, especially if you in if you go with a first time, like if you go with a first time head coach. So this would be Sam Cassell's first job, right? So for me, I think one of the perfect head coaches to come in with Sam Cassell, number 2, to kind of help round out his staff would be Nate McMillan. Nate McMillan, the last we saw Nate McMillan, he was coaching with the Hawks, right? But he was the coach. He was coaching the Pacers before, who history of success, the Blazers and the Supersonics back in the day. Nate McMillan, I think, would mesh well with Sam Cassell and be able to help Sam as a head coach kind of navigate some of the pitfalls, because recently, like, one of the things that if you haven't been a head coach, it's just different being the guy. Even when Steve Kerr was hired, if you look at all of the coaches that they had around Steve Kerr to kind of help guide him through his first couple seasons and like how to implement this, how to manage practice, how to run, how to change sets, when the bench players, like, you need a guy who's very experienced in doing that, right? And I think Nate McMillan I think he would understand the history of it. I think he also would mesh well with Joe Dumars. So now you got Sam Cassell, your number 1 guy, Nate McMillan, your number 1, like your number 2, right? I think that would be a good start in how you go about building this thing out, right? And then after that, how I broke it down was like coordinators to a degree. Johnny Bryant is an offensive coordinator. Now he has an opportunity, like it's kind of like an up and coming name as well for teams to possibly want to interview and stuff like that. That's Johnny Bryant is a coach on the Cleveland Cavaliers staff right now. And if you look at how Cleveland kind of runs their offense and stuff, and he's one of the people that kind of help put that together. Whoa, appreciate you, bro. Appreciate you. I'm trying to get back to it, dog. Trying to get back to it. Staff should have an edge similar to Ime. I agree. That's another thing I think. That's a really good point. That's another thing I think that you would get with a staff similar to this, right? Sam Cassell, tough. Nate McMillan, tough. Johnny Bryant, while a lot of people don't know a lot about Johnny Bryant, if you look at the way, Cleveland kind of runs their offense, you know what I mean? And Kenny Atkinson does have a lot to do with that as well. But learning under Kenny Atkinson, he was also with Johnny Bryant was with the Knicks, which means that was time he was with Tom Thibodeau not long ago. You know what I mean? Like that's all aggressive styles of play, in my opinion. And then for the defensive guy, I would look at Sean Sweeney, which is probably not like, again, I don't think this will happen, but if I'm building out like a super staff, this is how I'm building it out. Sean Sweeney right now is on the Spurs staff and is kind of in control of like the Spurs defense, right? The style they play and kind of coaching them up and the adjustments and stuff. Now granted, you don't have this is like aside from like players, because you need players to be able to make damn near anything work. So like I get that, but this is just the people in place. And what I think they will be able to do is the Spurs defense, like they coach culture and adjustments, and you see them adjust all the time, right? You see them play a bunch of different types of ways. And most of these teams and most of these coaches I'm bringing in, that's one of the things that I want. I want smart coaches, tough coaches that kind of like can make adjustments, coach on the fly. And when I look at, for example, Johnny Bryant with Cleveland, you saw them go from Darius Garland to bringing in Harden, and then you have Jared Allen in and out of lineups, and then in the midst of that you have Evan Mobley ascending, and you got to figure out all of that. And he's done a good job with kind of helping like navigate through that at all. And then to kind of round that out, I like to have a young sicko for the staff, young hoops nerds, gonna have wild ideas. I agree with that. I think Johnny Bryant might be similar to that. I think Sweeney might be similar to that. Because if you see the way that they coach, like their style, in my opinion, especially Sweeney defensively for the Spurs. It's kind of like they just in a more aggressive and like a more innovative, that's the word I'm looking for, a more innovative kind of style of doing things and whatnot. So like, again, the players matter, but if I'm just talking about who I want, these are the kind of players I want. And on that staff as well, I want Rondo as like the guy kind of managing my players and whatnot. I want Rondo around Jeremiah Fizz. I want Rondo in the ear of Derek Queen. Like, I want Rajon Rondo kind of, I don't want to look at it as like the player development as far as like just him as the guy that's going over everything, but like if I had a guy that's kind of like in charge of my young people, got that Celtics background, got the relationships with KG, the relationships with Paul, the relationships with Ray Allen, seeing a bunch of different great players, saw how great players work, not gonna BS you, right? So if I was to hire and try to put together a staff, this is the kind of staff that I will put together. This would be an ideal staff for me. And again, I don't think they'll do it, but I think if Joe Dumars went out and put together something like this would be a masterful opportunity, which you could believe in this going forward, I think. Because I think you cover your P's and Q's. I think Sam is a first-year head coach. Like, Sam has the resume that I don't think people will argue if you decide to pivot from Borrego. That's first. Also, I think the no, this is Ray John ain't got no, he don't have no real relationship with Ray Allen. But what I mean is, when I said a relationship with Ray Allen, like you had a situation where you had to play with a guy you wasn't really fucking with like that. You need to be able to like have those experiences and have somebody be able to teach that to your players. You're not gonna get along with everybody, right? You need somebody that, hey, no, we ain't get along, but this is how we managed and was able to still be successful. So I think like having a player like Rondo, kind of how DeAndre Jordan was, and I'm not saying DeAndre Jordan wouldn't be another person you keep around and stuff like that, but like imagine Rondo in the DeAndre Jordan role as a coach, while also strategically in the way they think the game, look at the game. I think that staff would be a knockout kind of staff, which you could see. Not only can you see them being, the one thing I like about that staff, I think, is if they had, let's say, a rough first season, I trust that staff to make adjustments and learn from their mistakes moving forward. Like, that's one thing I don't think they're going to do. They'll just keep repeating the same stuff over and over and over if it don't work, and just like eventually it's going to stick. It's like, no, I think they'll come up with a system that can benefit. And if they need to pivot, they'll be able to find ways to pivot. So for me, that's the ideal staff that I'm going with right out the gate. My second choice of head coach is Tom Thibodeau, right? And Tom Thibodeau would have been my first choice of head coach, realistically, because of the track record speaks for itself. I think if you were to hire Tom Thibodeau, like, I think you would immediately see progress from the roster, no matter who's on the roster. Like, I just think the biggest credit to Thibodeau is he squeezes every bit of life you could get out of pretty much any roster every season. So, like, I think that would be the biggest benefit to hiring Tom Thibodeau. And with Tom Thibodeau, you don't really need as much, I don't want to say like you need as much of the experience kind of helping on the rest of the staff, but I just like to have Tom Thibodeau. Right. I think Tibbs is going to get us in the playoffs. Exactly. Like he's a floor raiser. Like, he's a floor raiser. And I don't know if Tibbs ain't never won a championship, so it's not to say that Tibbs is the guy to get you over the hump. But when you trying to establish culture and you already know where you're going to be, Tibbs by like year 2, year 3, you'll be pushing for like 3rd seed, 4th seed, stuff like that. And like, I think that would be phenomenal here. Like that, like you could see Tibbs in this type of situation, just making the most out of it and flourishing. And that's not to say that you'll ever win, but I just think that based off what it is we want and what it is you need, Tibbs would be ideal. And he a great coach. So like for his staff, he had experience with if I'm not mistaken, like I think Adrian Griffin, he had some experience with Adrian Griffin. If you go back and look down like Adrian Griffin's line, he had some experience with Adrian Griffin. But I think like as a number two, a guy that if you brought Adrian Griffin to kind of learn under Tibbs, he had while he was with the Bucks, he was in the Bucks system, kind of got the short end of the stick. Right, kind of got the short end of the stick when Doc came back and took his job, but was doing really good until that happened. You could have like an heir apparent situation because you're not really sure how long Tom Thibodeau is going to be around, right? So that's why I have Adrian Griffin, a young, promising coach, was in some winning situations. Bring him in, let him learn. I don't know. I'm not sure where he is right now. I'm pretty sure he left the Bucks, and I didn't really look to see if he got another job or if he was just chilling just yet. But I would bring Adrian Griffin in under the Tibbs staff. Chris Fleming was one of the offensive assistants under Billy Donovan in Chicago, which no matter how you feel, but I think Billy Donovan was a pretty good offensive coach. And I think having that experience from him and like somebody being able to help Tibbs kind of stay up to date with the offense or whatnot, because Tibbs could put the ball in your best player hands and we just gonna give it to him and let him figure it out. I think Billy Donovan had a good offense, and Chris Fleming, part of that was passing the ball, ball movement stuff. So I think he would help. Andy Greer has been just, a lot of people may not know him. I know if you hire Tibbs is gonna want some of his people. Andy Greer has just been like the right-hand man of Tibbs for a long time, and also similar to that is Taj Gibson. That's why you see Taj Gibson at the bottom of that list. You already know when Tibbs goes somewhere, it's a couple people he bringing with him. Taj be one of those players. Taj be on every damn roster that Tibbs have, and I think it's similar to kind of like UDON, like somebody to help establish the Tibbs culture from a player perspective. Tibbs might hire Teague. He might, you know what I mean? Like Tibbs got those kinds of, like, he got his people. And if you gonna hire him and you know what he's gonna bring, I just kind of want to allow him to have, like, to be as comfortable as possible to a degree. So if you want to bring in Taj, I ain't bringing in Taj on the roster, but we can have Taj around the players. Andy Greer, again, that's just one of Tibbs' guys. They defensive guys. Adrian Griffin, like I said, would be one of those like hires that I thought had some promise to be molded and kind of move forward once, just to be able to keep that experience. I think you have to start building like a pipeline. You know what I mean? Similar to what you see with other coaches. Like with Mike Malone, David Adelman was on the Denver staff for a while. Mike Malone leave, David Adelman take over in that position. So similar to that, most times you keep somebody that's been in your building, you've been familiar with. That's kind of what's happening with Borrego right now. Been here for a while, knows the players, and maybe get that opportunity, but we'll see. So Tom Thibodeau, I don't think anybody needs to question like why people would hire Tom Thibodeau, but that's my case for Tom Thibodeau and his coaching staff. And his coaching staff. My third choice of coach would be Mike Inori, the number 2 or the main assistant for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, if you know the Timberwolves, he's an offensive guy. He's the offensive guy for the Timberwolves, which I think he would be a good coach because one, he's had to make some offensive adjustments throughout the season, right? They've played a bunch of different type of ways. He's had to coach through Ant's ascension as well, from good to great player to top player in the league. And he's been able to coach like shooting bigs because you had Cat there, you still got Naz Reid there, so you've been able to coach like versatile bigs. So I wonder if he'll be able to help Derek Queen, which somebody you putting your faith in moving forward. What could he do for Zion? Also, they've been to the Western Conference Finals the last couple seasons. So as the main number 2, you've seen him work as an assistant. Also, you saw him have to actually head coach last year in the playoffs when Chris Finch got hurt. He had to step up. He had to step up and coach some of those games. And I think he did a really good job of like making a case for himself to someday become a head coach. Right. So I think that explains like the Mike Nori case. For him, his number 2, I will want like a Jeff Van Gundy, right? A Jeff Van Gundy type of player, type of coach. Just a dude that's kind of like gonna be an asshole, an old experienced guy. Defensively, I think still could be sharp. Right? And just kind of help Micah like navigate the new head coaching system. Like he would be a first-year head coach. I think you need somebody with just a wealth of experience that's, been in some tough places, been in some rebuilds, had some good teams. Like you need people like that to kind of help you navigate what it is going on and how to kind of manage like expectations and whatnot. And I think Jeff Van Gundy would be a really good job. I think Stan being here previously and maybe what Jeff would find out from Stan, I think also makes it if he were to take, again, I don't think he would take this job, but if you could bring Jeff in as a number 2 to somebody like a Micah Nori, I think your top 2 on the staff becomes really competent. You know what I mean? Like I think you could see a really good offensive guy, and I think you have Jeff Van Gundy, who's good with defense historically and being able to adjust and kind of little throw it off. You know what I mean? You need some of that insanity, somebody who might throw a chair, who's gonna teach that toughness, and like you need all of that. So that's why I had Jeff Van Gundy as his number 2. Jared Dudley's name has come out recently as a guy that they might potentially look at as a head coaching candidate, and that's fine. But personally, I don't know if Jared Dudley, while he's been around the league for a while, absolutely need a psychopath. I think other than almost everyone I put together kind of got a little bit of insanity. I think they all got a little bit of insanity on each one of the staffs. If I look at it, I think Rondo's a little insane. Tom Thibodeau is insane in his own right. Jeff Van Gundy's a little throw it off. So we'll continue going with the other ones, but like you need people that like obsess over the job. And I think most of these names are like people, if you look at their resumes and like the organizations they've been around, that's kind of all they know, which is why I think that kind of bodes well. So like Jared Dudley, while I know his name has come out as a potential head coaching candidate, I'm more so like, dude, before I give you the head job, which I think you're gonna need way more help with Jared Dudley, I think he can come in and be more of an assistant. Like he's the assistant right now to David Adelman in Denver, and again, Denver, and he was the number 2 to J Kidd, right? Well, I don't know if he was the number 2, but he was like he was a coach on J Kidd's staff in Dallas. All of that's great. All of that's great. Personally, I will want you on a staff like this, learning from these kind of people, and then like with Micah, like maybe Jared Dudley's experience and being similar, like in similar like situations, maybe it helps. Maybe it helps keep, like maybe Jeff Van Gundy is while he might be a little too old, you know what I mean? Sometimes there is that age gap. You got somebody like Jared Dudley who's been more recently like an associate head coach or a head coach. I mean, a coach to like some really good coaches, and kind of help balance out the way the NBA is played now, right? Because you need a little bit of that too. The next person I have is this defensive guy was Rex Kleiman, he's been the most recently he was the defensive coordinator essentially for the Bucks with Doc, but he's been around the league for a while. He's with the Pistons, the Thunder, Kings, Wolves. Now he's just got a very extensive history as a defensive coach in the league, right? Or being on a lot of good staffs. And I think while Micah Nori is an offensive guy, I think Jeff Van Gundy, as an older coach, I think you need a lot of experience on that defensive side, especially with this particular team and like what they can do. So I think if Micah is going to focus on the offense, I think you'll have enough experience to be able to I think you'll be able to have enough experience to be able to really coach and navigate the defense and raise the level of that side and have a lot of versatility with that. So I think like a Nori, Van Gundy, Jared Dudley, Rex Kalaman, and then my last person for like player would be Jared Jack. Jared Jack spent some time in New Orleans. I think Jared Jack is a vet as well. Sometimes you don't need superstars to a degree to kind of like help your player personnel or like get through to your players. And I think Jared Jack, who has some experience in New Orleans, I think Jared Jack would be good for Jeremiah Fizz. And he's got some coaching experience too. Like currently he's with the Pistons. You see what they doing with Cade. Before that, he was with the Suns and like during the Monty Williams time, and he had experience with Chris Paul and Devin Booker and all of them. So like if you brought Jared Jack in to kind of assist developing your players, I think that's another win for you and a guy that will help establish, again, a tough dude, don't take no BS or nothing like that. So everybody that you're looking at, like honestly, all like damn near every name on the list kind of fits the Joe Dumars build, like the mindset and what he wants to do and how he envisions like the shape for how he envisions this team, right? So that's that. My fourth choice is Chris Quinn. Now, initially, when last season, when you had a feeling that Willie Green most likely wasn't going to be retained, which I would have fired Willie last year, Chris Quinn was one of the first names that kind of like went to the top of the list for a lot of people. But as I sat back and thought about it, I'm just kind of like, while Miami has done a lot, has done really well with less, and they had, some championship runs, with, they did really well with maximizing like lesser talent to a degree. I am not sure if I want like too much of the Spoelstra way, where like right now you see them not really playing they young stars for whatever the reason is. Like you could be in a rotation and be out the rotation. That kind of gives me cause to pause. So Chris Quinn kind of falls on my list because I don't know if that's something that is, something that'll be transferred over, or something that you believe in is the way to go about doing things. So I'm a little cautious about Chris Quinn, but he does come from Miami Heat, and that's a culture that's supposed to be like a culture hire, right? So if you hire Chris Quinn, that's what you're looking to do. You're looking to build culture while still getting, some X's and O's and stuff like that. So I would consider hiring Chris Quinn. Don't get me wrong, but that would be like one of the things that I'm concerned about, as if, for example, DQ defensively, we already know is a question. Is DQ falling out of the rotation for those particular things? I don't know if that's something that you can afford at this point of like where you are as a team. Sometimes you got to go, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. You got to play a certain player despite what some of their faults might be. So that's just like with Chris Quinn. But with that being said, like his number 2, I decided to go with do y'all remember Dave Jorger, the guy who used to be, I think it's Yeager is how you pronounce it, Dave Yeager, who was essentially like the grit and grind Memphis coach, was the guy who was coaching when Memphis had Mark Gasol and Tony Allen and what's dude name, man? Zach Randolph, right? He had some 50-win Grizzly teams. Like that dude was the establishing culture. Whoa, appreciate you, bro. Appreciate y'all, dog, for sure. But my number 2 would be for Chris Quinn. That Chris Quinn is a culture hire. David Yeager was there to establish that toughness, a certain style of play, and that's what I think was good about those Memphis teams back in the day. Like, they had to play a certain type of way for their team to be successful, to like match that identity. Also, another person who kind of fits the Joe Dumars style, and I'm not sure what David Yeager's been doing, so maybe that's a guy that you could actually get. But he was, he had some success in the league. He had a 3-4 year run as a head coach where his team was really competitive before it started, before they just decided to go in a different direction. But him as a number 2, I think would be really good. John Beckett is, a lot of people may not know that name, so you probably be hearing it here first. John Beckett is one of the offensive coaches for Denver, was around for like Mike Malone and is on Davis Adelman's staff right now. So and a lot of people look at Denver as a quality offensive team. So I think if you're going to be building culture, you still need people to kind of come in and help establish a system, structure, and that's been around winning recently, right? That's somebody you bring in that's kind of like, okay, well, in Denver, this is kind of what they were doing. And you can kind of help blend that with what it is that Chris Quinn probably would plan to bring in from Miami, right? Also, a name that most people may not know, Dave Bliss is a defensive guy for OKC right now. And everybody knows what the defense in OKC looks like. While head coaches get a lot of the credit, and they should get most of the credit, everybody on those staffs have a job, right? And Dave Bliss is one of the guys on the OKC staff that's, I don't want to say is receiving the credit, but it's partially why the OKC Thunder defense is what it is. And if you can kind of mesh that with what you see defensively, strategically from Chris Quinn in Miami, what David Yeager was in those Memphis days, that sounds like a tough defensive team, like a true, like, talk about a true culture. Again, that's a first-time head coach, so you need some people to kind of help establish that. They've been working with some young teams, and my player personnel guy, I don't think he would go into coaching, especially with everything he got going on, but it's Udonis Haslem. Come with Chris Quinn, help establish that Miami, we ain't playing no shit, right? And we talk about having somebody that's insane. Shout out to you. Appreciate you, eh? You know what I mean? Dog, Udonis Haslem would be in this. Udonis Haslem been like, he been to punch one of these dudes out, bro. He be on this Draymond. He be on this Draymond Green around here. With that, like, with the soft shit and all of that, you need somebody like that, in my opinion, in the building. And Joe Dumars wants somebody like that. He was like, look, it's all right to be a little crazy. I think if they broke out into a fight, Joe Dumars would be like ecstatic that they cared so much to fight each other. So that's my 4th option, right? And last but not least, you kind of gotta have, as my 5th option, you gotta have James Borrego. One, because Joe Dumars said, hey, he is a candidate, right? I don't know how much of a candidate he is. Like, I don't know if he's just saying it to say it, or if he really believes that James Borrego has an opportunity to get this job. With that being said, I still put together something for James Borrego, and let's look at it like this. So I think James Borrego obviously been here for a while. You know the experience. You know what he did in Charlotte and on the rise, but never really. He wouldn't be a first-year head coach. This would be his 2nd time around, right? So I guess you could give him benefit of the doubt of what he would do, but I personally will want better people around James Borrego. So my number 2 for James Borrego would be Terry Stotts, right? Terry Stotts was the head coach in Portland with Dame and CJ, and Terry Stotts, I think, would be good for James Borrego because he was in Portland when nobody really expected Portland to be good, but was constantly like, yo, Portland a 3 seed. Portland went to the Western Conference Finals. They had some disappointments. Don't get me wrong. Like, obviously, they lost to us. They got swept by us. And I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, that was under Terry Stotts. So, like, you might have some downs, but for the most part, throughout the regular season, Terry Stotts always did a really good job of navigating the regular season. Like, his offenses were always relatively good. Defense, defensively, they like the Blazers. If you remember the Blazers throughout Terry Stotts' time, they adjusted, they played fast, they shot threes. He was able to play with small guard, like he was able to like coach like small guards. So I think Terry Stotts would be a good I think Terry Stotts would be a good support system for James Borrego on how to one turn around a organization that I don't want to say don't have expectations, but don't have like a long history of success and being able to manage that. Borrego interview should be short. What was our record this year? Thank you for your time. Yeah, but you know, if you take Joe for his word, he's going to give Borrego a lot of benefit of the doubt and feeling like they were in a much tougher situation. And he said he was giving him credit for not getting blown out and being competitive and all of that. So, I don't know. For me, it's not an option. For me, it's not an option. But again, being that he said that it is, I built this out anyway, right? I built out the staff that I think if you hired James Borrego, this staff would be the most complimentary to James Borrego's style and what it is he wants to do. So the offensive guy I brought in for James Borrego would be Jay Triano. Now, people may not know who Jay Triano is, but Jay Triano was with James when he was in Charlotte. And you know, when the offense in Charlotte was fast paced, they were big with moving the ball. They got up threes. Like when a lot of people, while James gets credit for the offense in Charlotte, from my research, they say Jay Triano was the mind behind a lot of the offense in Charlotte. So if that's the case, you have to link James with a guy he had a really good relationship with, right? And Jay Triano went on to do some other things. After that, he went to Sacramento and he went to Dallas. And both of those organizations were like Sacramento at the time when he was there was like okay with the offense and whatnot. You know what I mean? That was when they started shifting it and like changing the way they played with pace, played fast, was helping develop De'Aaron Fox and whatnot. So I think if you're going to hire Borrego, you need to get Borrego guys. I think Jay Triano is like one of the key people that you have to have. Now with that as well, the main hire, the key hire to me for James Borrego would be, if I'm not mistaken, I think so, but I'm not 1000% sure. I'd have to go back and look it up. And double check. But I know for sure that him and James have a relationship, and he went on to coach a couple other places. Matter of fact, hold on, let me look it up real quick while I do that. Let me see. Jay, oh no, coach in college. Yeah, I mean, let's see what's going on with that. But while that's pulling up, hold on real quick. My bad. Bro, I hate when like stuff take forever to load. It says no, he went to, he's the head coach or one of the coaches of, okay, if that's who he is, that's the head coach for the Canada national team. All right, well, if that's the case, that's dope. Let me double check that real quick. Because if that's the case, that means you currently right now coaching. Yep, that's the Canadian basketball coach. So that means you got the experience with Shea and the Kill and all of those, and you seen how Canadian basketball has been turning around and whatnot. So if you was able to get that guy back, I don't think he's coaching in the States, but if he came back in the States and was on like a staff or something like that, that's a James Borrego guy. I think you give James one of his guys who kind of helped shape his organization when they were building it up right before James got let go. Now, the biggest hire, I think, for a James Borrego staff, which I definitely don't believe would take this particular job, but again, you never know. This is like a wish list, is Ryan Adams. Now, for people who don't know who Ryan Adams is the defensive guy in Golden State, right? And he's been in Golden State for damn near the whole Steve Kerr tenure. That should let you know exactly what you think of that guy. So like we just watched what Golden State did to the Clippers, and that's like with not great teams. You see them, they make adjustments defensively. They play all kinds of, they try to play with bigs, they play small, like the defensive schemes that they come up with, you know what I mean? Like, I just think you kind of got to give them a lot of credit for what's going on. So like the mastermind behind the defense there and what he's done, bring that guy in, because I think one of James Borrego's weaknesses and one of New Orleans' weaknesses is being able to establish the defensive side and like the scheme and whatnot. Everything has normally just been like switch everything, right? But there's no real creativity. There's no real principles. You need somebody that's going to be able to like really teach the defense and be able to like start instilling the culture of what it is that what it means to be, like what Pelicans defense is. I think Ryan Adams would be that particular guy. And to round out the James Borrego staff would be Chris Paul. Like, get Chris Paul in the building. You know what I mean? He got experience with James, if I'm not mistaken, when he was here with Monty. So, him and Chris got somewhat of a relationship. Chris Paul around Jeremiah Fizz. You already know Chris Paul is one of those psychopaths we talk about, you needing to be able to, just bring out the most in players and like try to just maximize a situation. And I think Chris coming back to New Orleans as a coach, I don't think he has to be a head coach similar to Rondo, but if he came back as a coach on the staff and like learned and built and invested back into the team, I think the way it ended with LA recently, I think it kind of like tarnished a little bit of the LA legacy to a degree. So I think, the only other place that he had the most time and like that, like if Chris Paul was back in New Orleans, like I think he'd be welcome and respected and everything. So if you brought Chris on that staff, I think you would really hit a home run with bringing Chris Paul home. And then you honestly can nurture Chris Paul to be the guy to take over once Borrego's time is done. So I think if you were to hire Borrego and you put this type of staff around him, I think you can maximize Borrego's time being here. And I think you can overcome some of the deficiencies to the point where like people wouldn't be pissed off if James Borrego got this job. And again, you would need more people on the staff moving forward, but these are the kinds of names that I think you could bring in that like will really stabilize, fit the Joe Dumars culture. I think most of these hires would be able to handle no matter which direction you tried to go, which is part of the key. And when you're thinking about like the hiring, right? Like people been concerned about the two timeline approach. And depending on what kind of coach do you win now, can they rebuild? I think if you build the staffs out like this, right, for each first year head coach, you got like a complimentary number two and head coach and each one is different based on the person that they're with. I think you could survive either scenario, whether we started out trying to win and had to pivot and blow it up, or I got Rondo on the staff. If you look, I got Rondo on. Rondo would be one of my primary hires. I got Rondo as my first choice with Sam Cassell. Right. So if I hired Sam Cassell, and let me just run through these real quick. So I got my ideal situation. My ideal situation would be hire Sam Cassell as the head coach. His number 2 would be Nate McMillan. Bring Johnny Bryant over from, and you probably gonna lose these guys, some of these guys, like in a year or two or whatever anyway, because a lot of them are looking for, like, looking to be head coaches. But if those opportunities aren't presenting themselves, maybe they stay where they are, or maybe you look to go make your name somewhere, in a different situation, right? So Sam Cassell is your guy. Nate McMillan is your number 2. Johnny Bryant bring Johnny Bryant as your offensive guy. That's the guy from one of the coaches from Cleveland. Sean Sweeney is the guy from that's running the Spurs defense right now. Been there with Pop, just got some of that Spurs. Everybody loved the Spurs organization. You bring some of that in. And then you got Rondo for the Celtics ties, him and Sam Cassell, both point guards, player development. And again, if that's the case, if these guys start taking jobs elsewhere, you could just be molding Rajon Rondo over time. But I think Sam Cassell is the kind of guy that will get the job and could be here long term. I think that's a guy that, because what I'm trying to establish is a guy that can come in no matter what the circumstances is, adjust. And you look at having a coach like similar to Eric Spoelstra, right? Eric Spoelstra's been coaching in Miami for over 10 years now, damn near 15. What is he, 15 years in? Something like that. And if that's the case, that's what you want. You want to project a hire that not in 5 years, I got to fire this dude. Somebody that I think could be around and could have us contending repeatedly, no matter if we got to rebuild or we have an opportunity to win. And Sam Cassell has historically been a winner, figured it out at every level, right? Give him an opportunity to do it. And I think at some point you might be looking at a situation where Sam Cassell could be a championship coach, right? So that's where I'm at with them. But I do have Rondo on that staff. Also, after that, my next choice would be Tom Thibodeau. Like, just go for the dude that know how to get it done. Tom raises your floor, maximizes your roster, and you may not win, but if you want to build culture and be respectable and be a legitimate organization, Tom Thibodeau is the kind of guy that's is for sure going to do that for you. So don't fuck around with it. Like, go ahead and hire you a guy that's going to really be able to, like, nobody has a doubt that if the Pelicans were to hire Tom Thibodeau, that in a year or two, they're going to be in the playoffs, right? Even if they didn't make it this year, let's say next season you hire Tom Thibodeau and you didn't get in. By year 2 of Tom Thibodeau, you almost know for sure that team will be a playoff team, because that's just what his resume says. I think those days of getting punked on a basketball court could be over with if we choose the right staff. Absolutely. And I think the way I put together all of these staffs, I think like that shit dead anyway. Like, if we were to lay this out like this, again, Adrian Griffin for Tom Thibodeau. Adrian Griffin, I think you could mold Adrian Griffin. He was was the Bucks head coach before Doc, kind of backdoored him out his job. I think you could be molding him for whenever Tom Thibodeau eventually steps away, and be the next guy in line to take over, with know the culture, be able to kind of keep that going. Chris Fleming is an offensive guy that was in the Bulls organization. You kind of gotta have somebody to be able to like bring some innovation to Tom Thibodeau, so we ain't just we in some fucking Zion pick and roll all game, or just like like how Stan was Z point Zion. You can see Tom Thibodeau doing something like that. We need somebody to kind of balance that out a little bit. Andy Greer is just a Tom Thibodeau guy, and Taj Gibson is a Tom Thibodeau guy. Like, if you hire Tom Thibodeau, you got to bring in some of his people. That's just what it comes down to. But Sam Cassell, Tom Thibodeau, both no nonsense guys. And I think you feel good with both of those hires. My third choice was Micah Nori. Micah Nori, the Timberwolves, young stars, offensive mind, flexible, shooting bigs. You know what I mean? You saw him. They've been in deep playoff runs. They've had to adjust. So you've seen him not get like he's been on staffs where, again, Chris Finch is the guy, but you're the number 2 to Chris Finch. They haven't been flustered. They've been down in playoff runs. They had to come. They had to, like, if you go back and look at the Minnesota Timberwolves runs, a lot of those are impressive. So, like, I would give Micah Nori that opportunity, and then I give him just a wealth of knowledge. And Jeff Van Gundy, another psychopath. I like using that, somebody who's, you know, somewhat insane. You definitely know you're not getting bullied with Jeff Van Gundy out there. I think Jared Dudley would be good on that staff. Personally, I know they're talking about Jared Dudley as a potential candidate for this job, but I personally don't know if he would, if he's ready to be a head coach. Who am I to say that he isn't? But like, I thought it was too soon for somebody like Willie Green to get a head coaching job. And I think it would be similar for Jared Dudley. Even like Jared, if you look at Jared Dudley, to be honest, Jared Dudley from a coaching standpoint, I think has maybe had more responsibility than Willie Green. But Jared Dudley is kind of similar to what Willie Green was when he was coaching. Like, Jared Dudley was with Dallas with Jay Kidd, and you know they had their run to the finals and constantly competing, been around Luka. Like, same to when Willie Green was with Golden State. Willie Green left Golden State, went to Phoenix. Jared Dudley left Dallas, went to Denver. Similar situations, but I just think it was a little too soon for Willie Green to get that job. Like, there's a lot of parallels right there if you look at it. And if Jared Dudley was to get hired, I'm pretty sure, like, again, that's not to say that Willie Green didn't have some success and Willie Green didn't do decent in the beginning. But I think, and I don't want to put this on Jared Dudley because they could be completely different people. But I just think it's a little too soon to hire Jared Dudley. But if you have him on the staff, I can see that. Like, I wouldn't be mad with Jared Dudley on the staff. Also, again, you have Rex Kallman, who's the guy who just a defensive guy, been around the league, coached the Bucks, and then Jared Jack as like your playoff guy. I thought it was too early for Tiago Splitter, but he seems to be right on time. Well, Tiago been there for a while. Tiago, and again, Tiago still might not get this job. Like, Tiago might not get this job. Also, with Tiago Splitter, it's kind of like one season may not define if you're good or not, right? I think Tiago has done enough to earn himself an opportunity in Portland, but that don't necessarily mean that Tiago's a good coach. Like, we don't know just yet, right? Like, if they didn't got, I think they did a good job getting out of the play-in. But if they get blasted in this first round, right, which that's how it's looking, and nobody gave expectations on them to win, don't get me wrong. But if they get blasted in this first round, and it's kind of like you come back into the next season, nobody's gonna like pick Portland to say, okay, like Portland's gonna be what exactly. So, and it's not that it's necessarily a knock against Tiago. I'm saying I think he's done enough to earn an opportunity. I just don't know if, like, we don't know if he's a good coach yet. Like, I don't think with one season you could determine if somebody is a good coach or not. But I like, again, I think he's trending in the right direction. You kind of got to wait it out and see. Jared Jack. So Jared Jack will round out my Micah Nori coaching staff for his players. I think Jared Jack would be good for Jeremiah Fizz. Got experience in New Orleans as well. Been to the city. So I just think that's the kind of guy as well that you want. Been around, like, right now with the Pistons, again, was with the Suns, been in some good organizations. So I think that's the kind of guy you want helping mold your rosters, tough and whatnot. Again, my fourth choice, Chris Quinn. He used to be a little higher on my list, but after watching how, Eric Spoelstra's kind of been operating with his young players, and we could pivot to like a lot of young players like relatively soon. I'm not sure how I feel about that. So he kind of slipped on my list a little bit, but still, if they were to hire him, I think it'd be a really good candidate. I think they in Miami, they make the most of their situations. They try to make the most of their rosters, and they believe in culture. So if he could bring some of that, I'll be cool with. Dave Yeager was a culture guy from Memphis. I think had great runs in Memphis before they pivoted from him. I think he would be a good support system for Chris Quinn. John Beckett is a Nuggets offensive guy, an offensive coach on that staff. I think not anything from Denver, but I think similar to if Jared Dudley, while I think Jared Dudley has been around long enough to get head coaching, a look at a head coaching job. I think John Beckett, if you brought him in as like an offensive guy to kind of help establish the offense and the system, I think that he fits there. Dave Bliss is the defense of OKC. I just think that matches the Miami Heat way, right? Like the Memphis Grizzlies grit and grind way. Like bring the new listen, we was just said this is the way we were doing it last year, right? Like this is the way that we teach it. This is how, like, the closest thing to a champion, right? Bring that into your organization and like help start teaching those principles. And then you round that out with Udonis Haslem, somebody that's just willing to Draymond Green something. You know what I mean? If you really need to keep somebody in line, one of the people that really helped establish, the culture in Miami. A lot of great players stand by UD. And I think you need somebody like that, similar to DeAndre Jordan. DeAndre Jordan seems a little more what's the word? Like he seems a little more a little more regulated, I guess, like a little more down to earth maybe than UD would be. But I think you need somebody like that in your system. I mean, in your organization to help establish the system and stuff that you want. And my last choice obviously would be James Borrego if they decided to go the James Borrego route. You have James Borrego as your head coach. Second year, second opportunity at the head coaching spot. You bring in Terry Stotts, the guy that was with Portland. Portland not came out of nowhere, but like kind of helped establish Portland as a perennial playoff contender in the West. Was known for the offense, still good with the defense. Jay Triano is James Borrego's guy when he was in Charlotte. I'm pretty sure he probably feels like they have some unfinished business, right? Bring your guy in that was known for innovative offense, kind of help get James Borrego back on track with that. Ryan Adams, fucking the defensive mind behind Golden State, and Chris Paul, perfect for Jeremiah Fears, known for mentoring teams, like just bringing along young teams, showing people how to win. I think Chris Paul would be able to help Chris Paul be able to have that New Orleans. Like you'd have a lot of New Orleans people here. James Borrego had experience with New Orleans. Chris Paul had experience with New Orleans. So I think if you went this route, you would be able to have I don't know how the James Borrego hire would go, but if you put a staff like this around James Borrego, I think you could get the fan base to support it and you'll be able to maximize his time here. So that's my coaching candidates. That's how I would fill out their staffs. And obviously there's more that you will hire because coaching staffs are more than just 5 people. But these will be the way that I go and how I look to build this out. The biggest thing, first off, this shit realistically not going to happen because it will cost, and we don't know how much they're willing to invest in the coaching staff as a whole. But when you fire everybody, I'm pretty sure they got some money freed up. So we'll see. And if they take it seriously, right? If Joe is serious about what he's doing, he won't just hire a head coach And then, saddle him with people that's not going to be able to help him succeed. You need to look at every step of the coaching staff and locking that shit in to help establish that culture and get your message through. And I think all of these potential staffs that we put together, as far as like the first 5, would go a long way in doing that. So that's that. What else? The other big questions I had was, again, one was the money. Another one was if they would come here, like would any of these people decide to come here, right? It's kind of like if they don't have many other opportunities. And then again, Chris Quinn has been in Miami for a while. It's kind of like at some point you might just need to take the opportunity to give yourself an opportunity to get a job. Like you don't just turn down head coaching jobs because they don't come available often. And you could say, listen, I'll wait for the next one, but your ass can end up waiting and being assistant for who knows how long, right? So that's a reason for like why here. And if you believe in yourself, realistically, if you turn around New Orleans, and I think everybody that takes a job believes that they're going to do a good job and be able to turn it around. If you win in New Orleans, you would be legendary. You would be legendary, right? Like when Sean Payton took over, like Sean Payton was great in New Orleans, but like New Orleans is such a special place when you win here. And if you listen to the people that's been around when the playoffs are like active and going, like there's nothing like it. If you could come here and be a good coach and establish something in New Orleans, I think it will go a really long way. So that's my why here. And I think that pretty much covers it. I think that pretty much covers it. I'm looking through my list of stuff that I have for this. So again, that's my list. I'm gonna put this out on X as well. You kind of go through it, break it down if you want to, kind of nitpick what you would do differently or whatever. But that's kind of where I'm at, man. So that's gonna be today's episode. And again, what I plan on doing is, while we have this out, I'll probably reach out and probably do more episodes with like some other people and kind of get their thoughts and ideas on it and like what they would do differently or like what person they don't want near the organization, who they think would fit better on certain staffs. So we'll kind of move forward with that as well. But like, man, as we close this out, Jacques Vine ain't got a job yet, bro. Jacques, you ain't heard Jacques' name in a while. Like I feel like I ain't heard Jacques Vine name as a candidate since he got hired here. Since he interviewed here. If I'm not mistaken, his last job was the Brooklyn job. I'm not sure what Jacques Vine doing, but that's a good point. That's another good point. Jacques Vine turned down this opportunity and I think went back to Brooklyn. But like, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think he had a head coaching job since then. So like, you could think another opportunity is going to open up, but it don't always happen like that. Like it just say, bro. And again, this season, if you look at it, if you go through the league, other than, like I said, us, the Bucks, maybe Orlando, depending on what happens with Detroit, like who else? Maybe Portland, maybe Sacramento, but they don't sound like they about to fire Doug Christie. So it's just kind of like, what other jobs are gonna be open? None of the good teams seem like they're going, unless something random happens, right? Maybe Mike Brown get fired after one season, but I don't know if they're gonna do that after they paid him to go there. But like, you paying Thibodeau, who's not there. You think they're gonna fire Mike Brown too? I don't see that happening. So it's kind of like, what other jobs are available? And if you got Joe Dumars coming out saying, look, one of the things I think about, one of the toughest things I think when you take a new job and you want to know what's going on with the roster, like, I don't think new coaches want to take jobs where you about to be like, you're going to be bad, but like rebuild bad. Like it's tough for coaches to survive rebuilds. And if you come here, the way the Pelicans are talking about it, you know they're not going to, well, I don't want to say no, because we assume they're not going to gut your team immediately, right? Because 2 seasons in a row of 15 wins, 20 wins, 21 wins, you'll fuck around and not get a job again. So, like, if they say, okay, well, look, we keeping, you already know they got some young talent with Fears and Queen, something that as a coach you should be excited about building. They not rookies, they going into year 2. The report's been about them getting back into the draft. So if they're serious about getting back into the draft, it's like, okay, we might have a pick this year. They said we keeping Zion. For whatever you say about Zion, he's still a productive player in the league. Seemed like he's healthy, figuring that out. And maybe a new coach is just what he needs. You still got Trey, you still got DeJounte, you still got some pieces to where a new coach is probably not being like, man, we gonna be all like there's no hope for next season, right? They were in a lot of games. Like if you do the research on the team, so you probably feel like your structure or whatever could come in and like make a difference with a full off season. And again, if you hire the kind of staff that I'm talking about, not just the head coach, but if you got the right to bring in your people to help support you, let's say they said, all right, look, we gonna hire you, but we also gonna allow you to pick a couple of your people to bring with you that you feel work well and allow you to do your job. That goes a long way as well. So like, I think if you go about it this way, like New Orleans becomes one of the destinations that people actually look for. And I don't want to like sell the dream of New Orleans and people wanting to come and coach in New Orleans, because I know it's not really a destination like that. But based on what's going to be out there, you may not have that many options. Based on the options that's going to be available, this might seem like one of the better ones. And if they offer you an opportunity to finally become a head coach when those opportunities don't open up all the time, like maybe you strike while the iron's hot, and maybe that job is a blessing in disguise. Maybe you right on track for turning it around. So that's just kind of where I'm at with that, man. Again, man, appreciate everybody for tapping in, man. Hit that like button. Again, I'm going to put out the chart later and whatnot so everybody can kind of go through and look at it or whatever. I might consider pinning it or something like that so we can see until they hire a coach. With that being said, man, that's going to do it for me today, man. Hit that like button, share the stream. I'm A. Davis, Pels in the Blender. Appreciate everybody. Enjoy y'all lunchtime. Enjoy y'all afternoon. Be safe out there. Beginning of the week, man. Let's go kill it. Let's be productive. We got playoff. Oh, I'm tripping. We got playoff games tonight. Who running it tonight? The Raptors versus the Cavs. Can BI bounce back on the road? And I don't know necessarily if they're gonna win. I don't predict them winning. Knicks Hawks, and Timberwolves Nuggets. I'm gonna go Cleveland. I'm going to go Knicks to go up 0-2, and I think the Timberwolves still want to make it 1-1. I think the Timberwolves make it 1-1. I'm interested to see how injured Ann is, but the Nuggets was like, this team been playing each other for a couple seasons, so like in the playoffs, so I think they got good history with each other, but I think the Nuggets tie that series up 1-1, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Knicks go up 2-0 and Cleveland go up 2-0 on the Raptors. Happy 420. I ain't one of the ones, but shout out to those that are. Happy 420 for y'all. Y'all be safe out here. Don't get caught up on the road. You know what I mean? Looking crazy and whatnot. Y'all go ahead, do y'all thing, man. Again, I'm A. Davis, Pels in the Blender. Y'all be safe. I'm out. Peace.